The chamber swallowed Riven's breath before he could steady it. Cold blackness pressed close around him, thick with the smell of old stone and dry metal, while the black glass door sealed behind the hound with barely a whisper. Somewhere overhead, men would soon notice the missing beast. They might notice him as well, and in the silence beneath the ruins, the unseen voice lingered like a hand resting against his thoughts. At last, one of you is rising again. Riven did not answer. The copper plate burned warmly inside his sleeve, tugging toward the chamber's depths. At his side, the brass-ribbed hound lowered its head until its iron snout nearly touched the floor. Its blue lens eyes dimmed to narrow points. The damaged rear leg trembled, but not from strain. Riven had seen beaten dogs cower before a raised hand. This was different. The machine was bowing. He eased one shoulder against the sealed door and listened. No footsteps beyond it. No muffled shouts from the passages above. Only a slow clicking from within the hound, each turn of its hidden gears too loud in the dark. Riven caught the hound's jaw and held it still. The blue lenses flicked toward him. Quiet, he breathed. Something moved far ahead. Not a footstep, not breathing. A soft scrape passed from left to right as though a chain had drawn itself across stone. Riven slipped his lock pick from his cuff. It was a poor weapon, thin enough to bend between two fingers, but its familiar weight steadied him. He crouched and touched the pick to the floor. Stone, dust, a shallow groove. He traced the groove until the metal tip struck a raised edge. The sound was tiny, yet the hound jerked so violently that its damaged leg buckled. Riven caught its brass shoulder before it crashed down. Beneath his palm, the frame vibrated. The voice returned, quieter now. "You fear being heard." Riven froze. The words had not crossed the chamber. They had formed behind his eyes. His fingers closed around the pick. "If you can hear that," he whispered, "then tell me what's listening." No reply came. The plate pulled harder, sliding against his forearm as if drawn by a magnet. Riven drew it from his sleeve but kept it hidden beneath his palm. Its etched lines glowed a dull amber, revealing a circle of floor no wider than a wash basin. The groove beneath his pick curved away from him. More lines branched from it, too exact to be cracks. A mechanism. The hound stared at the plate. Its jaw opened and a thin note began to build inside its throat. Riven clamped its muzzle shut. "Don't." The note stopped. From the darkness came another scrape, closer than before. He had two tools and no safe choice. The pick could test the grooves, but one wrong pressure might release a trap. The plate wanted something, and trusting that pull meant trusting the voice that had called him one of its own. Riven set the pick flat across the nearest groove. Nothing happened. He nudged it forward. The pick dragged 3 finger-widths, then snapped downward into a narrow socket. A heavy click rolled beneath the floor. The hound lunged. Riven threw his weight against it as a seam of pale light opened in the stone. The glow raced along the grooves, splitting into rings and angular symbols. Darkness retreated across a vast circular chamber. Pillars emerged first, each wrapped in tarnished copper bands. Then alcoves, broken tables, racks holding shapes that might once have been tools or weapons. At the center stood an empty stone cradle. The hound fought toward it, claws scraping despite Riven's grip. Its blue eyes had turned white. "Not empty," the voice said. The copper plate twisted in Riven's hand. He nearly dropped it. Its etched lines rearranged themselves, flowing like molten wire until they matched the illuminated pattern under his boots. A sharp pressure pierced the base of his skull. Bound relic detected. Dormant ascension array, partial function. Compatibility confirmed. Riven bit down on a cry as heat flooded his arm. The plate sank against his palm without cutting skin, and suddenly he felt the chamber around him, not as sight but as pressure, distance, and interruption. He sensed every pillar, every alcove, the sealed door behind him, the hound straining at his side, and one human-shaped absence clinging to the ceiling directly overhead. New faculty acquired, echo sense. The thing above unfolded one joint at a time. Riven froze before the thing could complete the motion. The hound's brass claws scraped half a finger's width across the stone. He caught its damaged muzzle in both hands. "Quiet," he breathed, so softly the word barely disturbed the air. Blue lenses flickered toward him, then snapped upward. Something clicked behind the hound's ribs, too fast, too loud. Riven pressed his forehead against its cold brow and willed it to understand. The bond between them tugged, a taut wire carrying fear in both directions. Echo sense pulsed. The chamber returned to him in contours without light. Pillars rose as dense columns of resistance. Dust drifted as faint static. The ceiling entity was different. Not a body, but a void around which every buried vibration curved. 6 limbs were folded against a narrow torso. 2 ended in hands. The others terminated in hooked points sunk into the ceiling. Human-shaped only if judged from far away. The copper plate burned against his palm. "What are you?" Riven thought, unsure whether he addressed the faculty, the relic, or the thing above. The answer came from beneath language. Listening requires a mission. A mission permits return. A warning, then. Echo sense was not passive. Every pulse he sent into the chamber might announce him as clearly as a shout. Above, the entity's lowest arm unbent. Riven let the faculty fade. Darkness and ordinary silence rushed back, leaving him dizzy. His stomach clenched. A warm thread slipped from one nostril. He wiped it with his shoulder rather than risk taking a hand from the hound. The thing clicked once. The sound came from no mouth Riven could see. It traveled through the ceiling and down the nearest pillar, a delicate metallic tap. The hound shuddered. A panel along its spine lifted, exposing the dim blue coil beneath. No, its jaws parted anyway. Riven seized the coil housing and pressed down. The hound's gathering whine dwindled into a wounded hum. Whatever instinct had seized it was stronger than fear. It wanted to answer, or salute. A second click came from above. Then faintly from somewhere beyond the stone ceiling, boots stopped moving. Those above had heard. Riven's choices narrowed. Stay blind and wait for the ceiling thing to descend. Use echo sense and risk revealing himself. Or touch the plate to the array and trust an ancient machine that had already driven a spike of pain through his skull. The plate shifted against his skin. Its rearranged lines tugged toward the illuminated grooves beneath his boots. Not trust, Riven decided. Leverage. He lowered one hand, keeping the other clamped over the hound's spine. Every muscle protested as he crouched. The faculty had left his knees watery and black flecks swam at the edge of his vision. He placed one corner of the copper plate into the nearest glowing line. Nothing happened. The entity released its hooks. Echo sense flared without permission. Riven felt it drop. He turned the plate. The etched lines aligned. The array caught. Light raced outward under the dust, not brighter but deeper, sinking through stone in concentric rings. The falling entity halted a handspan above Riven's head. No impact, no rush of air. It hung there, suspended in a net he could perceive only through the faculty. Pain cinched around his skull. Dormant ascension array, handshake initiated. Choose operating mode. Awaken, conceal, commune. Riven's pulse hammered. Awaken might restore the array, or the creature. Conceal might hide him from the searchers above, but leave him trapped beneath a descending horror. Commune offered information and, likely, a path directly into his mind. A muffled voice penetrated the ceiling. Movement below, another answered closer. Get the sounding spikes. Riven selected commune. The choice was not made with words. He opened echo sense toward the suspended absence and shaped a single narrow pulse, no wider than a thread. Who are you? The return struck him like a bell. Cold halls. Hundreds of kneeling figures with copper fused into their palms. A sky split by a vertical wound. Towers sinking beneath black water. Then the ceiling entity standing upright before an enormous sealed gate, its many limbs clean and silver, its featureless face reflecting stars that no longer existed. A voice entered behind Riven's eyes. "At last," it whispered, "a candidate who asks before commanding." The hound went rigid. Lines of blue light spread from its exposed coil into Riven's gripping fingers. The plate answered, binding all three, the hound, the array, the hanging guardian, into one vibrating circuit. Condition met. Voluntary contact with unclaimed warden. Hidden attribute revealed. Resonance. Resonance. 1 ascension path. Listener 1/7 gates open. Partial faculty evolution available. Echo sense may now distinguish intent from motion. The pressure became unbearable. Riven tasted blood. Above him, the guardian's nearest hand rotated palm up. Something small lay in it, a black key shaped like a human tooth. "Take it," the buried voice said, "and I will conceal you." A spike punched through the ceiling. Stone cracked. White light lanced into the chamber, sweeping across the guardian's suspended limbs. The men above fell silent. Then one of them whispered with sudden terror, "The warden is awake." The beam swung toward Riven. He reached up and closed his fingers around the tooth key. Cold bit through skin, muscle, bone. Accept concealment. Cost required. The guardian's buried voice seemed to speak from behind his eyes. What is hidden must surrender proof that it ever stood in light. Footsteps scraped above. Someone drove the spike deeper, widening the crack. The white beam split into searching fingers. "Movement below," a man called. "No," another answered. Calm, familiar, veil. Not movement. A system response. Riven's blood chilled. The hound pressed against his leg, trembling but silent. Through the new edge of echo sense, Riven felt the intentions overhead as shapes separate from their bodies. 4 enforcers bristling with fear, veil focused like a descending knife, and something farther away, immense and wakeful, directing the light without touching it. The warden. "Your price," Riven whispered. The key wriggled in his fist like a trapped insect. "A memory freely given," said the guardian. "One that made you who you are." The beam touched the edge of his boot. His mother's face rose instantly in his mind. Not because he chose it, but because the key had found the deepest root and pulled. He saw her leaning over a kitchen table, candlelight caught in her dark hair, telling him that surviving was not the same as living. He remembered the exact crookedness of her smile. The key wanted it. Riven nearly dropped the thing. Above, metal groaned. "Bring the breach charges," Vale ordered. "If the old shell has selected a vessel, we cut it out before it seats." The guardian's many hands twitched. Dust poured from the ceiling. The hound bared its teeth at the light, then lunged away from Riven and seized the rusted plate he had dropped earlier. It dragged the plate across the stone with a shriek. Every hostile intention above snapped toward the sound. Smart beast. Riven used the heartbeat it bought. "Take the candle," he told the key. "Take the table, take the room, not her." The cold paused, cost insufficient. The spike punched down again, missing the hound by inches. It yelped and rolled behind a suspended stone hand. Riven felt Vale's intent shift, not toward the noise, but toward him. Vale had recognized the diversion. Intent from motion. Riven understood. He hurled the tooth key toward the white beam. Vale's attention followed it despite his discipline. For one precious instant, his intent detached from Riven. Riven triggered Vale's step. Pain tore through both calves. The chamber folded into a strip of gray silence, and he crossed 6 paces without occupying any space between. He reappeared beneath the guardian's open palm and caught the falling key before it struck the floor. The hound scrambled after him. "Take the day she died," Riven gasped. The key drove itself into the center of his palm. There was no wound. There was only absence. Rain vanished from his memory. So did the smell of wet wool, the hospice window, her weakening fingers around his, and the final words he had carried like a coal inside his ribs for 9 years. He knew his mother was dead. He knew he had been there. But the day itself was gone. Cost accepted. Concealment claim established. The guardian closed its hand. Darkness fell, not darkness of blocked light, but the erasure of every sign that Riven, the hound, and the chamber's awakened system existed. The white beam passed through them. Echo sense recoiled as the men's awareness slid aside, unable to hold the thought of what lay below. Riven bit his sleeve to smother a scream. The key remained buried in his palm, drinking warmth. Vale's step had left his legs spasming, and the evolved echo sense hammered every hostile impulse into his skull. Response terminated, one enforcer said uncertainly. Vale did not answer. His silhouette appeared at the crack. One eye stared down through the white glare. Riven sensed no searching intent from him now, only deception. Vale could still see. The Guardian's fingers tightened around Riven, stone grinding softly. The Marked One resists concealment. Riven looked toward the rusted plate. The hound understood before he moved. It darted out, clamped its jaws around the plate's leather strap, and dragged it directly beneath the breech spike. Riven pushed Echo Sense past pain. He found the instant the man holding the spike intended to pull it free. Now, he breathed. The hound jerked the plate upright. The spike caught through its broken center. When the enforcer hauled upward, the plate slammed against the ceiling, wedging sideways in the crack. Riven Vale stepped once more. His left knee gave with a wet pop, but he emerged beside the counterweight chain he had noticed hanging behind the Guardian. He wrapped both hands around it and dropped his full weight. The chamber answered. The Guardian's lowest arms unfolded. Ancient stone fingers struck the ceiling, not to break it but to rotate the entire slab. The wedged plate became a lever. Rock screamed. The breech snapped shut, flinging the spike and two shouting men backward. White light narrowed to a thread. Vale's eye remained visible until the final inch. "You," he said. Then the ceiling sealed. Silence crashed down. Riven sagged against the chain. The hound limped to him, muzzle bleeding, and shoved its head under his hand. 1/7 gates open. Concealment trial complete. Hidden level advanced. Unseen I right arrow KEYBARER I ability EARNED. False echo. You may leave one believable intent where none exists. Warning. Each false echo creates a true trace. Riven laughed once, breathlessly. An underdog's ability if ever there was one. Not strength, not armor, just a better lie. The key rose from his palm. A black shape remained beneath the skin, like a tooth embedded point first in his flesh. The Guardian lowered him to the floor. "Passage," Riven said. "You promised concealment. I have concealed you from the Warden's sight." Stone split behind the Guardian, revealing a narrow stair climbing into darkness. The hound whined. A black mark was spreading from its bleeding muzzle, curling along its cheek in the shape of an open gate. Bound witness created. Riven stared at it. "What did you do?" "What you chose," the Guardian replied. "A key requires a lock. A secret requires a witness." Far above, bells began ringing across the city, 7 slow notes, each deep enough to shake dust from the walls. The buried voice lowered. "The city calls that creature the Warden because it guards them." A second voice spoke from inside the key in Riven's palm, small and horribly familiar, wearing the cadence of the memory he had just sacrificed. "No, Riven, it guards the 6 gates they already opened." The Guardian pointed toward the stair. "And now it knows the 7th key has chosen you."